This is Lieutenant Sulu of the Starship Enterprise, standing by on the bridge with the Christmas song. Chestnuts roasting on an open fire.
On the first day of Christmas, my true love gave to me. By God, why the fuck are we doing this? I still can't believe that I agreed to doing this. I can't believe that I actually talked about this on the show, but here we are. On the first day of Christmas, my true love did indeed give to me Star Trek Lower Decks Season 1, Episode 1. Episode is called Second Contact. Well, we've made it, guys, and for the next 12 days, we're going to be podcasting in some shape, way, or form. How do you feel, Tyler?
It happened. It happened. We're here. We have to talk about anti-Semitism, which I didn't expect to have to talk to you about again on this show. But we're here now. We're here now.
Bill, how do you feel?
If our true love gave to thee the show, I really question true love.
Oh, man.
Can we get a return? Did they get a gift receipt?
Like, instantly after we all agree that this is like what we're gonna do, then everything. Oh, look, Big Mouth has a new season out. There's so many things that we could review that are much more intelligent and juvenile while having substance. But we got Lower Decks.
I have two things I want to throw in at the top before we start.
Yep.
Three things, actually, that I think it's important for us to talk about and have in the back of our mind going forward. The first is that one of the lead writers in this show is Mike McMahon, who is from Rick and Morty. He's worked on other IP tie-ins, but he is also actively in the Rick and Morty writers' room. So there's going to be a bunch of jokes that we're going to see that we're going to say this feels like Rick and Morty.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. Secondly, is that it's worth remembering this show is officially all canon. They've hired two people, including an author who did a bunch of the tie-in stuff, to be in charge of ensuring this is all canonical. So, this is all canonical now.
Yep. This is apparently a direct in the canon, and we see this in later episodes. It's happening at the same time as The Next Generation, which happens at the same time as Voyager and Deep Space Nine.
Roughly. So it is officially, It starts after the movie Nemesis.
Yeah. Yes.
That was the last point I wanted to make, was it's in that era. Kind of.
Yeah.
Let's get into the first fucking episode.
Well, before we
I
do
will
that,
say
let's
this on
talk
the intro.
Let's talk a little broader Star Trek. We don't talk a lot about Star Trek on the show. I am a Star Trek fan. I like Star Trek.
Same
I've
here.
watched almost all the shows, all the series. I watched Picard. I watched Discovery. I left this out just because at the time I had other stuff to do. So that's one of my motivations for us talking about this show. I want people to know this. I am a Star Trek fan. This type of comedy, this type of show, these types of shows, they're just not for me. I don't find them funny. You can hide them under the shroud of intelligence, but it's very lowbrow comedy. It's not smart. It's really not smart comedy. And this is my issue with Rick and Morty. Rick and Morty is one of the most unintelligent, stupid Neanderthal shows I've ever seen. And the fact that anyone can actually say, oh, it's not for you because you're not smart enough to understand the jokes. Fuck you, sit down.
Oh, yeah, that's...
It's a stupid show, shroud in bullshit.
Well, it's pseudo-intelligent, right? It does do some very basic toying with themes of nihilism. It talks about suicide, but I'm not saying that to give it credit. Like it. I would argue Rick and Morty is better than this.
Wow. I don't know about that.
I would 100%, and I will in fact go further to argue not only is this not for me, this being canonical makes Star Trek worse.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
We're going to talk more about that as the
'Cause
season progresses. I do enjoy some of the middle episodes a lot more. Basically when they try to lay off of the stupid humor, I enjoy the show-ish. When the stupid stuff start compounding itself and not shrouds it, but overcomes itself with stupidity, that's when I need to just turn off and take a break. And I gotta admit, like, I took many breaks watching every episode sometimes because it was too much for me. So the point I'm trying to make is that I'm a Star Trek fan. I'm not shitting this because it's Star Trek. I'm shitting on it because it's not a good entry into Star Trek lore. Tyler, you mentioned that you're a fan also.
Yeah, this show actually got me to rewatch Deep Space Nine to be like, remember what good Star Trek is? And even Deep Space Nine, it has a rocky. The first 3 episodes are a little bit rocky. I mean, TNG had the first 3 episodes rocky. I mean, I didn't care for Enterprise broadly speaking, but yeah, like I'm watching DS9 and watching Picard not too long ago. I think one of the things we're going to keep butting up against is that the central thesis of Lower Decks is at odds with the central thesis of the rest of Star Trek.
Yeah. And you
Like,
know what the
the
worst part
central
is? So Lower
thesis-
Decks was based on an episode of The Next Generation where we took
Yeah.
and saw things from other people in the crew. Something that we always have to remember in Star Trek, it's similar to Star Wars in the sense that we get a very small scope of what we've seen. There's a much bigger world. So in this episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, we saw stuff from other people in the crew's point of view. That was the inspiration for this show. But I find that this show didn't do a good job of capturing that. They went to the lowest possible denominator. It was just not a good. It's not good. It's just not good. I don't buy it.
You want a great quote, Boris, about this
course.
show from
Of course.
Mike McMahon from the writing team? His explicit goal was to make a show that was more adult than Rick and Morty.
I'm not even gonna put
Ah,
response to that.
ah.
Phil,
But yeah,
everyone knows you as a Star Wars guy. You host Mando Monday for the most part. No, you've never talked about Star Trek outside of the fact that you admitted last week or the week before or the week before that you have gone to a Star Trek convention and not any Star Wars celebrations or anything like that. What's your background and history with Star Trek?
TNG, Deep Space Nine. I dabbled in most of the other properties or have watched them in background viewings. I've watched a little bit of Discovery. I've watched Picard. Those types of things. I'm not huge into the Star Trek universe, but I find that it's pretty accessible. I've always enjoyed it. There's a lot of things that they do in Star Trek that is very appealing. And I like that it's different than Star Wars. I like its take on the universe and the diplomatic side of things and just the attitude of Starfleet and things like that. I find all that is just refreshing sometimes, and also it kind of pigeonholes it sometimes too.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I mean,
Go ahead, Tyler.
I was going to say Star Trek is inherently about striving for utopianism, and whether you achieve it or not depends on the seasons. But it's about like how good humanity can be.
Yeah, it's a nice thing to fall back on. You know what I mean? Like feeling down about stuff. You watch an episode of Star Trek, you see some struggle, but you see ultimately the best of people. Right?
Yeah,
It's a
and
good
like
thing.
some of the best episodes are about ideas in a way that, like, Measure of a Man is one of the best episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Just like a series of discussions.
Yeah. I found that this show, I know you guys are very critical of it and its humor. The humor falls flat for me. I can say that up front. I did enjoy certain things like the theme song, the opening credits, stuff like that. I found was very on point with a lot of Star Trek, even with the humor. But as a casual Star Trek fan, I'm not going to proclaim that I'm some kind of Trekkie, but as a casual Star Trek fan, it's got access points.
Sure.
It doesn't offend me, but Tyler and I were talking about this off air. I do find that when I'm watching the show, I'm thinking about what I could be otherwise doing.
Yep. Exactly.
I tried to watch 5 episodes last night, and I got 3 in, and I'm like, I'd rather go take a hammer to my foot right now. It's just, yeah. And the titles of the shows, the concepts are all attractive. They're
Yeah.
all uniquely weird and
Like,
offer
for me,
some humor.
yeah, you're right. Like, the first couple episodes for me were a huge struggle. As the season went on, I opened up a little more. Maybe I just gave in. Maybe I just gave up. I don't know. I don't know what it was. But, things were landing a little better. The jokes were still not for me, but I accepted the show and its existence to a certain extent. But I do think that Tyler brings up the best point, and he says that Star Trek is worse off as a product because of this show. So, guys, let's get into it. Season 1, episode number 1, Second Contact, original air date August 6th, 2020, written by Michael Mahan, directed by Barry J. Kelly. So the star date is 57436.2, and we kick it off with Ensign Brad Boimler. He's recording a log, pretending to be a captain, and he's caught by resident rule breaker Ensign Beckett Mariner. Mariner at this point makes fun of him, so we establish the fact that they are not a part of the main crew. We get established the fact that, they're on the USS Cerritos, where their mission is to complete not first contact, but second contact with new species. At this point, Ensign Devana Tendi joins the crew. She's super excited to enter the big leagues as she's just a new recruit from Starfleet Academy. So she's very Star Trek at this point. Tendi's orientation mentor is Boimler, and he's very by the book. He's kind of the keener of the group. So we kind of get the setting here in this opening few scenes that, we're not looking at the bridge crew. We're looking at, the lower decks. So that's kind of the setup. Tyler, how do you feel so far?
I came up with alternate titles for every episode, and my alternate title for this episode is, "Hey guys, did you I watched Rick and Morty?" Because this entire setup is, the one of them follows all the rules and the one of them doesn't.
Yeah.
And it's what I'm talking about. Is it treats Star Trek as though, and we see it more in the next episodes as well, but it's about how, what if rules were dumb? And Star Trek is regularly about the limitations of rules. That's what it's about.
Yep. And in a future episode, they make fun of that directly.
But what if, God damn it, I just...
Yep. All right, we'll move on.
They act like rules are never broken. When it's that's every episode. Every episode is
exactly.
Rules.
That is a central theme in this season, in this show so far. So Mariner's rule breaking hasn't gone unnoticed by the head of the ship. Captain Carol Freeman tasks Boimler with spying on Mariner and to report any indiscretions on the latter's part. Boimler has an eye of the captain chair, and so he's trying to be, like I mentioned, he's a keener at this point. So he's up for the task. All right, it's at this point the Cerritos arrives at the homeworld of the Galardonians. It's new people. They've began engaging, and now they've started the second contact procedures. The ship's mission is to ensure all the paperwork is in order for the new species to join the Federation, but also setting up universal translators so that the Federation can communicate with their new entrants. So I kind of like that in the fact that, they are following some of the procedural, they are following some of the Star Trek lure, and we don't really see this part of of the show. So it was good in the sense of, we're getting this second contact stuff. We see that, hey, they do have to set up the universal translators. There is paperwork to do. There is stuff to make sure that they're good for the Federation. So on that point alone, this was okay.
Yeah, I agree.
It's an interesting idea.
Mm-hmm. I thought so. I thought that we were, aside from the opening bit being a little bit funny, but it's introducing characters. So I get that they're trying to create some tension and establish the parameters of the friendship going forward. So I get what they're doing, and I found that it was appealing, the whole idea of second contact. I renamed the episode too. I called it Zombie Puke.
Zombie
I
puke.
made a note and I'm like, zombie puke, because
Yep.
Yeah, what happens?
All right,
Yeah.
so the Commander Jack Ransom was down. He greets the Galardonians. He's bitten by a native insect. When he gets transported back to the ship, the Cerritos, the transporters don't pick up this anomalous biological entity. That took me a while to write, even longer to actually say. So there could be an issue with the transporter's filtration system, or something was malfunctioning, or they just didn't have the log for this new species in the transporters.
Yeah, it's Star Trek. Something went
Yeah.
wrong. Sure.
Something went wrong.
Again. Sure.
So Ransom wanders around the ship before the infection takes hold in the bar, turning him into a full-on zombie. Ransom goes on a biting spree, leading everyone in the bar becoming infected. Utter mayhem and chaos ensue. Meanwhile, in the bar, Ensign Sam Rutherford, a new cyborg, is on his first date with fetching Ensign Barnes. Everything's going swimmingly before Ransom's outbreak. Rutherford and Barnes are unflappable. They keep cool heads and continue chatting about their interests, all while stunning their rabid comrades. Tyler, I feel like you have something to say about this.
Yeah, so there's two parts. The first bit is Ransom is our Riker for the season.
Yeah.
And honestly, I know barely any of their names because it's just like, oh, this is making fun of Riker.
Mhm.
And this is where you start to see the problems between what this actually entails for the rest of Star Trek lore. Is that just like, if senior command is just this shitty to people, that implies that like the Federation is just shitty.
Mm-hmm.
Like it implies that it's not this greater hope. It's just lazy bureaucratic nonsense for no reason.
Yeah.
And we start to undermine our own mission. The bit of our Geordie LaForge character, who is literally pitched in the documents that the writers write about as Geordie LaForge, but not as good because he's not as experienced yet.
They even make that joke. That joke was made. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, hey, you have an implant
Yeah.
like LaForge.
Oh yeah, I do. Oh, what an amazing.
Yeah.
That's a decent bit of like they're so used to this stuff that it's just fine. I mean, that being said, in a later episode, we undo all of this. So honestly, this show isn't even canonical with itself. I don't know how it fits into canon when it's so inconsistent.
Yep. I feel like they've said it's in canon just for the sake of saying it is. In my mind, it's not, but whatever. Here we are. All
I
right.
think
So just
they're
as,
trying to create that controversy, right? Like they're trying to challenge Star Trek fans. 'Cause in a
But-
way, they say it's canon. There's going to be a whole lot of Star Trek fans that would probably skip this, that are going to go watch it and then go,
Yeah.
"Oh, I hate it."
well, here's the thing.
Did-
Was the Lego Holiday Special in canon for Star Wars?
No.
No.
What- what-
Same
Lego
thing in
never
my
counts.
opinion. It's the same
Lego
thing.
never counts. Yeah. Well, the Lego specifically never counts.
Yep.
They may
All right.
try to adhere to canon on some points of Lego.
Yeah, that's
But-
different. Adhering to canon does not mean it's in canon.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
fan fiction tries to adhere to canon at times, but does not make it canonical.
It
All
is
right,
true.
We're gonna move on. All right, so just it seems like these two may be a perfect match. Rutherford discovers that the red alert system has blocked comm bridge entry to the elevators. He's more interested in fixing that than engaging with his date, so that's the end of that. Meanwhile, Tendy reports to the medical bay, which is overrun by patients. Dr. Tana curtly directs her to manually pump the heart of a fellow crewman while she subdues more crew members. And at this point, it's like, oh, how will the Cerritos survive? It is Star Trek. Everything's going to shit. And I guess this is where we enter Act 3. Help is on the way, but it doesn't know it yet. On the Galardonian planet, Boimler spots Mariner trading Federation technology with the locals, and this is a clear violation of the Prime Directive, which prohibits the exchange of technology with aliens. Boimler is convinced Mariner is giving the Galardonians weapons and confronts her. In fact, Mariner is tired of bureaucracy without farming supplies, and she's sneaking some to them. The locals make a run for it, leaving a giant spider to chase Mariner and Boimler. Spider proceeds to swallow Boimler. Once it's tired and asleep, Boimler and Mariner return to the ship. He just casually leaves the spider's mouth. They did a whole bit there that just didn't land for me. At this point, Dr. Tana runs a quick scan of Boimler and discovers that the slime he's covered in could be the cure, and voila, Boimler unknowingly saves the day.
Honestly, there's a cute interplay in that. The only redeeming thing out of it that I took was the fact that I don't even know their names, Boimler, I guess, but the girl that he's opposite of, she reveals that she was on the first crew that made contact a year ago.
Yeah.
And that it alludes to her having a much deeper backstory than what we think, as they're all ensigns. And really, she's like, oh no, I was here and I knew that these farmers were having this problem, so I'm doing this. And then she could talk to the farmer and she's like, so that spider, like, what's it gonna do to him? And he's like, oh, it doesn't have teeth, it's just gonna gum him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then she's like, okay, so there's no urgency, no one's gonna get hurt here. This is actually, it's just gonna mess with them.
Yeah.
There was some stuff that was okay for me. It was silly, it was stupid. Did I like it? Not particularly, but it tried to give legs to certain events. And of course it's going to be convenient storytelling. Of course that slime's going to be the antidote for the zombie outbreak. Of course.
I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with that at all. My problem is more along the lines of stuff of like the fact that the Federation does not care about starving people who are joining the Federation implies that, again, it's a bunch of dick wagging that doesn't do anything, which then like it takes this entire idea behind the Federation in Star Trek and just starts to like, you're crumbling it for the sake of a joke. Or like, I don't know. It's this whole sense of oh yeah, they don't care about starving people. And it's like, well then the Federation is not the good guys.
Yeah. And I think that's what they're trying to play with. I think, and they're doing this wrong, because the whole point of the Federation, the whole point of Earth at this point, is that everyone's in peace. The Federation is at large, taking over, and everyone is at peace. I feel like this show is trying to add some like grayness to the Federation, and you can make arguments that that's the case. You can make arguments that that's where the world is. The Federation isn't as perfect as we all think. In Picard, we're kind of seeing this, but I feel like they're really trying to make a lot of, in-canon changes to what the Federation is and how it should be perceived.
Well, yeah, I mean, the issue also is that the suggestions they make here are not the same criticisms that Picard levies. Like, Picard levies that they are legitimately concerned. Yes. It's isolation, it's broad trends and forces. And this asserts that a bunch of these captains are just a bunch of dick-wagging assholes.
Yeah.
But it also, like, the meta that's going on here, from the 3 episodes that I've seen so far, is that we're telling the story of the lower decks people, which is trying to get a relationship with middle class or working class people, right? Where they're saying, oh, look at the bridge crew. Oh, they remark about Captain Kirk. They remark about all of these people like they're infallible people, and they're like, oh, we do all the dirty work. We make the Federation run from our side, and that's that's a constant in this show, right? And they're trying to show that angle of it, like we're in the tubes, we're doing the work to keep the ship, and we're doing the ugly jobs that nobody really thinks about. Second contact.
So
you know what I mean?
Here's my counterpoint to that is the humanity during Star Trek is a post-need society. And it is canon that no one works unless they want to.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have no need to work. There's no, and it also like they have stuff of like it's implied that the bridge gets a better replicator stuff just because fuck you to the lower decks.
Mm-hmm.
Which is it's not even like oh you're rationed of you only like each person only gets so many whatever which we've talked before. Just we don't let you have gnocchi because fuck you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the thing, they're adding class now to the world and the Federation, and that's something that no one's ever done, and that's not what the Federation is at the core of it, and we can have this debate whether how gray and how perfect is the Federation actually, but, I think that they're making a lot of, I guess, clear choices to their narrative that really question Star Trek at its core.
I mean, this feels to me like Superman has to murder a guy. But
Yes.
that implies to me you don't understand Superman.
Yeah. To a certain extent, I agree with that. Yeah. All right. So
it's trying to draw that parallel to get the audience to relate to it. Because we all feel that there's this different class of people up there. We all feel that, oh, well, I'm doing my job and it's not glamorous, but I'm a cog in the wheel and I'm going to have my fun, right? Like even with the opening scene, the girl's drinking the whiskey that's banned, you know what I mean? The Romulan ale or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And she's just getting hammered off that shit, right?
Yeah, which the Romulan ale was the wrong color, but we're not going to talk about that.
Yeah, I know.
All right,
it goes everywhere.
At the very end, Dr. Tana gets the credit from Captain Freeman in her log, while Boimler's forgotten. His faith in the officers are shaken, but at the end of the day, he doesn't rat out Mariner to the captain, so happiness ensues, and that is episode 1.
We have a big reveal at that point. That Mariner is the daughter of the captain, and the father is an admiral in the in Starfleet.
So again, we're now introducing rampant nepotism. We're introducing, and the other side being that, like, I mean, again, Mariner is just, well, I just want to do an Archer character, and it becomes even worse in the next episode.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's like having one of your officers on a military vessel just showing up hammed all the time, and like, okay. You watched Rick and Morty. Good for you.
Yeah. All right, guys. That's the episode. Overall impressions, Tyler?
I hate this show so much.
Phil?
It is what it is. Always the first shows in these types of endeavors are a little bit shaky unless they're really thought about. And I think they're throwing a lot of stuff at the wall with this show and seeing what sticks.
All right.
I will say that Phil's take is correct. They are trying to do that, but Star Trek is a show about a post-class society.
Yeah.
Well, I just think that there's a lot of material in the Star Trek universe that they could have thought about this a little more than throwing this episode out there, or this concept. Like, I get the desire. I just don't think it was done with any responsibility to Star Trek.
Done so much better if you were somewhere like, I just can't.
Yep, exactly. All right, guys. Well, that is episode 1. Phil, how about you tell people how they can get a hold of us?
Well, you can talk to Santa Claus and just say, hey, get Boris, Tyler, and Phil this message. Or you can go to www.itscanonpodcast.com. You can go to Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at It's Canon Podcast. You can email us at show@itscanonpodcast.com. You can subscribe via, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Amazon, Santa's butt. I don't know. Wherever you find podcasts, you're going to find the It's Canon Podcast show. If you like what you hear, please click on the subscribe button and leave us a rate and review.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Phil. All right. That is day 1 of our 12 Days of Christmas. That's all we got. Good.